What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Zamboni. I am an herbalist and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. Thank you, as always. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for checking it out. Thank you for hitting this save button in the corner. Thank you for sending it to a friend. Thank you for sending me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. Thank you for just listening all the way to the end. You are a champ. I really appreciate the whole community for being here. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So, how about some feelings? It's a feelingsy kind of week this week. So the main event this week is we have Venus in Capricorn moving up to conjoin Pluto. So Venus is with Pluto for like ever. We're gonna it's we've got a Venus retrograde coming up, and so Venus is moving super slow at this point, and has been within 3 degrees of Pluto already for a week, and then is gonna move a little bit past, and then station retrograde, and then come back, and so it's really just Venus Pluto time for a long time here. So when we're thinking about that, then Venus, a lot of times, it's one of our personal planets. It has to do with our desires and our feelings and the way that stuff sort of like the emotional content of things. A lot of people talk about Venus and relationships, and that's really real. Venus is the planet of relationships and harmony. Not only romantic relationships, but friend relationships as well. Like just the relationships that you have with other people. This is the kind of thing that Venus wants to talk about. But certainly your romantic relationships as well, if you've got one of those, or maybe you have an ex or something like this. If we're thinking about Pluto, then we're thinking about underworld things, right? We're thinking about the stuff that lies beneath, the thing that is underneath all of, there's all this stuff up here, which is alive and well and all this sort of stuff. And then there's the deep under story. There's stuff going on underneath that we can't really talk about, or that we can't really see all the time. But Venus is going to move into that space now. And so we're going to be feeling those feelings, feeling the feelings of what goes on underneath. I like the idea of like working with something composty here, or mushrooms, right? So we can think about like a mycelial network, which exists underneath the soil. So the whole of the earth basically is, kind of held together, not just by the root systems of the plants, but also by the mycelial network, which also sort of functions as a communications network. It's like an internet for soil. And so there's this, but if we're underneath the soil, then you don't see it real good, right? That you gotta use your other senses a little bit. There's something really tactile about it. There's something, like it's a little bit like using the force a little bit, right? So there's, it's this sense of like, I can't really see what's going on here, but I gotta like feel my way through it. And especially with Venus, then that makes a lot of sense here with the feelings component. So we might be looking at relationships that are coming back. My teacher, Austin Kopic, said something really eloquent. He was speaking about like laying old past relationships or whatever, so if you've got relationship patterns that have sort of haunted you. Haunt is a really good Pluto word as well. If you've got relationship patterns that sort of continue to haunt you, then there's something here that wants to bring that up and sort of bring it to the fore. And it's like, all right, we got to deal with this. We got to look at it and engage deeply with it. Deep is another really good Pluto word. So this kind of deep engagement is not only this week, right? We've got, like I mentioned, we've got this whole Venus retrograde cycle, and we've got Venus in Capricorn until March. So there's plenty of time to work with this stuff, and to feel all the feelings and see how we feel about feeling this way, right? So there's plenty here. I'm really interested in the way that we can work with this. In my monthly, I mentioned an audit of control. And so we can think about control systems or power dynamics. That's also another thing that comes up with Pluto all the time, is like power dynamics and how is power actually wielded and that kind of thing. How am I engaging power? How am I wielding power? This kind of thing. And so there's, feeling into that, and how are we going to work with this, and do we like it? And maybe we should find a way to put the things that have been haunting us to rest, right? And this is part of, there's been a major resurgence in things like ancestral work or lineage repair, or things like even sort of like land acknowledgements, right? The idea that I am currently here on stolen land, land that has been stolen and exploited, and there's a lot of blood in the soil and this kind of thing. And so we are obviously seeing the return of these kind of ghostly figures, and working with that and feeling into it. How are we going to sort of move forward? And is there a way that, so the goal of ancestral work is to sort of like take the kind of the restless dead and get them to rest, or get them to move into the space where they are well, and where there's a, rather than being restless dead, we want them to be comfortable dead, or we want them to be ancestors who look out for the coming generations. And so there's something here about really engaging that in a deep sort of way. Now, while we're thinking about that, the other thing that's going to be going on this week is we have the Sun and Mercury in Sagittarius, who are both going to make a square to Neptune in Pisces. So these are in Jupiter signs. And so a lot of times when we think about the Jupiter signs, there's a sense of optimism, or a sense of joy, luck, abundance, these kinds of things. And with a square to Neptune, with Mercury being the storyteller, right? Mercury is the one who communicates, or who sort of like drives a narrative in some kind of way. And so if we're thinking about the way that we are telling a story here with Neptune, there is a danger of falsifying in some kind of way, right? Or there's a danger of maybe sort of like rose-colored glasses, or seeing what you want to see here. Neptune doesn't do literal very well. Neptune does metaphorical really well. And so we can think here about maybe song or poetry or something like this as a good way to engage this kind of thing. When I've been thinking about it, then I've been thinking about, so my favorite author is called Ursula Le Guin. She's the bomb. And she wrote in her introduction to Tehanu or something like this. I can't remember which one. But it was an introduction to one of her books, and one of her novels. And she was talking about this sort of sentiment, this feeling space. Let's remember Venus Pluto, right? This feeling space of like something that is deep and profound and meaningful, and being unable to put that feeling into words. You can't really say that thing with words. And then she was talking about the novel and the idea of writing a long story that sort of like takes you through this whole process, and then brings about this feeling space that you can't put into words. And so she was talking about the idea of like saying with words that which cannot be said with words, right? And so there's something really interesting here. And so if we're thinking about the way that the Sun and Mercury in Sagittarius square to Neptune in Pisces is really good with this imaginal kind of space, with this kind of metaphorical or fictitious might be a good word to think with here. And we can maybe interrogate these terms fiction, right? Fiction doesn't necessarily mean fake, but it does mean that it's not literal exactly, right? And so engaging that in some kind of way might be a way to actually use this square to Neptune, Mercury square Neptune, in a way that is useful or helpful. There's a way here to say the thing that can't be said with words. It can't be said, you can't shoot straight at it. You can't go directly at this feeling space in order to put the dead to rest. You have to sort of like meander around it in some kind of way. You have to engage with metaphor. You have to engage with symbols. There's this concept of twisted language where you really just can't say and this is true with like all of our archetypal stuff, right? And this is why I'll end up listing all these things. Like when I say Venus, then I'm like, okay, well, we're looking at relationships, and we're looking at friends, and we're looking at lovers, and we're looking at things that feel good, and harmony, and beauty, and stuff. This long list of stuff that Venus sort of symbolizes, right? And the shorthand for saying all those things is just saying Venus, right? And so if I and so the word Venus doesn't mean anything necessarily because it means all of those things, right? And so this kind of language element is what we see really coming up here and engaging with the feelings of it. So, this can, on a personal level, I feel like this is really useful and helpful, especially if we're trying to navigate weird things. Maybe you've got an ex that you're like back in contact with or something like this. If we're looking at Venus retrograde, that is definitely a possibility, right? Also, if you're, we'll talk about that next week. We'll talk about Venus retrograde for real next week. But, if we're looking at this kind of stuff, if we're looking at matters of the heart, which are deeply entrenched, then going straight at them might not be the way to move. And taking an oblique path via metaphor and symbolism might be a more effective way to generate the ideas and the feelings that you're looking for, or that you're trying to conjure. Now, this also, I've been talking about Sagittarius and the South Node in Sagittarius for a while, around like too much information and what even am truth at this point and this kind of thing. And so I would still definitely think, Mercury square Neptune, also Sun square Neptune. We're looking at like authority figures, kingly types, famous faces, this kind of thing. People who show up on your screen with light in front of them and stuff like this. This kind of thing, there might be something here that it looks a little trickstery, right? We might see some like lies or deception or something like this going on here as well. Again, we're talking about this oblique path around the direct truth or the literal truth. There's a literal truth that exists, but that might not be the most resonant form. And so we're going to have to pay attention to that. We're going to have to, this is the age of spin, right? And so how can you spin what matters to you in a way that keeps it flowing, that keeps us moving in some kind of way, I don't know. That's what I'm here to do. Try and tell a good story. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for being here. I super appreciate everybody. As always, if you want to look deeply into your chart and how the Venus retrograde and Venus Pluto and these transits are going to affect you personally, you're always welcome to get a reading with me. I love getting to meet the folks who have been checking all this stuff out, and to work together alongside everyone here. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.